Good evening everyone, Ragewood here, back with another Godforge video. As we normally do, it's Tuesday, which means Fateless have dropped something on their YouTube, only this time it is not done by Simon, it is with Suzi and Brad. Now, at the time of recording, I believe this is the second day of the Pocket Gamer event in London, which Sham, Simon and Fiction are at, which is why this has been taken on by Suzi and Brad. So I'm super excited to get a glimpse at what they're talking about, and let's see if they can show us any spoilers, whether that's game content or what it's life is like behind the scenes, things like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So just going to leave it on mute for a second. I'm going to put myself up above Brad, just so we can see him. Now, as I normally do, I will put the link to the actual video itself down below. Rather than the description, I'm going to put it as a pinned comment now, just to help out with the algorithm and such. Now, the beginning of the video, Suzi's just mentioning that Brad has literally just finished recording the podcast episode with myself, which we did. That was super fun. Enjoyed that. So I think it's coming out in 2 days' time, again at the time of recording this. So that'll be fun to look at. I might do a react to my own video, simply because there's things that I've thought about since, additional comments that I've thought of since I've slept on that. So we will do that, and I'll probably aim to get that out maybe Saturday, depending on how work and things are. Anyway, with all of that out the way, let's go grab the headphones and dive into it.
On that note, we actually have something really fun planned very soon. So, spoiler alert, there is going to be a developer Q&A live stream through this YouTube channel soon. It's something we're working on, and it will become a regular thing. I don't want to say a date yet, because we haven't, they're busy, they have conventions. We're going to make sure we get that date secure. But stay tuned, guys. We have a really fun live stream to come with the devs. So, to kick
I am super excited about that. I'm really looking forward to watching that. Now, when they say with the game developers, it could be Brad, like himself here, as you see him. It could be Saphira. It could be Dirk, I think, is on game design as well. It could also be a plethora of other people that we don't necessarily see behind the scenes. So, personally, I'm going to find that really enjoyable to watch. Hopefully, I'm not working when it's on. If not, then we'll just have to rewatch it at a later date. But that is really cool, and super excited to seeing that when it drops.
all this idea off, I'm like, all right, Brad, you're on the design side of things now, and I want to do a little bit of a design Q&A. So, how has it been to go from content creator to designer?
Yeah, it's been amazing, and I'm super thankful for Fateless kind of bringing me on and letting me be a part of that team. Everybody I work with is awesome, Dirk and Paul and everybody else. So it's actually been a goal of mine from the very beginning. So I kind of got started in the industry as a caster in like StarCraft, and then as a gamer and doing content for mobile. And the goal was always kind of in the back of my mind of I want to someday be a part of producing games in some capacity. So it's kind of awesome, and it's a dream come true, honestly.
Oh, that's awesome. Love to hear that. Yeah. And
so for those of you who don't know, Brad's been in the gaming scene for a very long time. He was, I think he played StarCraft 2 professionally. I might be wrong there, but I know he played that extensively. And then from there we had Chofly Elite in Raid, I think it was, and from there he's covered loads of other different games, and to now being part of the Fateless team. It's cool that he's got to live his dream in working for a game development studio. I think that's every guy's dream at some point, or at least not every guy, but maybe a lot of gamers. I myself would love to do Brad's job, which we'll get to in a bit, but yeah, super happy for him and glad that, he's enjoying what he's doing, and that transition seems to have been pretty smooth.
job description, what do you work on for Fateless?
Sure. So I kind of do a little bit of everything in terms of helping out with like the podcast and different YouTube stuff like this video right here, or community stuff. We used to host events in Discord, or I'll pop in and say hi. But in terms of like the 9 to 5, the main daily workload here at Fateless, my main job right now is to research different mythologies, different heroes that we're going to be thinking about having in the game, so that I'm mentally equipped and prepared as good as I can be to try and implement them into Godforge in a way that makes sense in our universe. So kind of researching what elements they are typically using, or just different parts of their lore, if they're super aggressive or super primal, or if they're more passive, or if they tend to be more of a support that's healing. So that way we can try to have heroes that make sense in terms of what kit they're bringing to the game. And then I'll do a first draft of a kit for a hero, and then it will start going through our review process with Simon and different people kind of signing off or requesting changes, and then I'll have to go kind of design that hero in a technical way that the coders and the development team can bring their kit to the game systems wide in terms of implementing it.
Awesome.
That is such a cool job. Now, don't want to spoil too much, but I was asked in the podcast whether mythology and all of that was sort of like a passion or a hobby of mine, and it sort of is, sort of isn't. So nowadays, less so. But growing up, I studied classics in college. I didn't do too well in that because I don't care for politics nowadays, let alone what ancient Roman politics was. But the mythos side of things always super interested me. I had horrible histories growing up. In fact, my parents even had like an encyclopedia just on like Greek gods, and my head would be in it. I loved going through that. So Brad's job sounds amazing to me. And it's interesting to hear that from him. As often like a game designer, that's quite a broad term. I'm sure there are many facets in game design that you could be a part of. Now, when I see a concept leaked, a 2D concept, I'm guessing myself what I think it could be. And so it'd be super cool if some of the things I've looked at recently or sort of pondered, for example, Ganesha being an invoker, a support type character, perhaps with a revive because he's the god of new beginnings. Be interesting to see whether my wavelength is the same as what the Fateless team have been looking at, or whether we differ, massively. But yeah, it was cool to get that insight from Brad on what his day-to-day is.
Actually, before we go into the hero side of things, I had a question to you about the process of that. So working on that victory screen, what do you think was what makes a victory screen satisfying? Like when someone hits that end of the battle, what do you think is the key that a developer needs to land? Is it animations, fonts, colors, sounds, something else? The combination? Like what do you think is the key that you guys were really going for to make that feel satisfying?
Yeah, that's going to mean different things to different people. I know for me, anybody that's familiar with my content from back in the day, I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I love analytics. I love diving in to crunching numbers and min-maxing. So for me, one of the most important elements to get right is what information you give the player from their run. Like, do you want to know how much DPS each hero did, or how much healing each hero did? How many turns did they take? Like different things like that. I want information given to the player that gives them tactile feedback on what hero brought value, maybe what hero didn't do much, and I can think about replacing them. Like, oh, this hero did 1,000,000 damage. This hero did 100K. Okay, maybe I need to go look at their gear and figure out how to kind of min-max that and bring it more into line. So I think the metrics that we give the player for information immediately available after a run would be a super key element for me.
I agree. That's so true. It's like you think about the visuals, or some of these games have fancy animations as you end a battle, but really it's about the numbers, and that's a really good point.
So that's not something that I ever would have thought about, really. Like, I've always seen it in the screens, like Raid, Watch of Realms, all that kind of stuff. It's not something I've ever really noticed until it was brought up now. So since I'm recording this obviously after the video dropped today, But now I've realised that, I am finding myself noticing it. And Brad's right. Aesthetically, games appeal to me, but when I'm in the game, efficiency is what I'd like. I want to do things quick and efficient, move on. Like the fact that they're going to be bringing that into a victory screen, I think will be really beneficial to myself and also a lot of other players. And again, just some more really cool insight from Brad here.
All right, so on to a little bit more of the kits and characters. This one's from Adventures of Adam. I have a question from the community. So, are there any buffs or debuffs when testing that were either too good or too bad that you're just like, no, this needs a big nerf, a big buff, like we can't do this? Like you just had to like you thought it would be simple and you're just like, nope, this just doesn't work. Dramatic change from the norm. Like, does anything stick out to you as far as that goes?
Hey, what's up, Adam? By the way, good question. Yeah,
Yeah, shout out to Adventures of Adam. Hope you're doing well, pal.
this happens a lot during the design process. Is typically someone will be assigned to design a certain amount of set bonuses or a certain amount of debuffs or buffs, and then the whole team will get together and be like, ooh, this is way too strong, or hey, this is a little bit weak, let's take a look at this. In terms of like testing, that's going to be a little bit down the road when we've got more of a beta ready product, so we can sit here and really just grind our own game and test PvP and play against each other and try to converse about what we think is really going to be overpowered or what is really lacking. So right now it's mostly discussions and just based off of everybody's knowledge in the industry and playing all these different games. And the testing will be here in probably 1 to 2 months or so when we can actually dive in and really have the game ready to like go against each other and stuff and figure that stuff out.
Okay.
So yeah, it's still early days. A lot of these sort of questions will be almost similar responses in that it might be a bit too early to tell. Now, with regards to what buffs and debuffs are strong, weak, or that they've had to go back to the drawing board on, they're going to be testing it, and then people who have signed up, we're also going to be those guinea pigs testing things out before the game launches later this year. Now, the beta testing has been pushed back slightly to April, May, if you did miss out on that, which I imagine means the actual game launch itself will probably be moving from sort of September time to sort of November, maybe Christmas. I have no inside information on that. I'm just going off of the whole, they've added 2 months for this first round of testing, so I'm just adding 2 months later down the road. I'd like to be wrong, but also, you know, if it comes out around my birthday or Christmas, I'm also not going to complain.
All right, we know there's going to be many different upgrade systems in Godforge. Like, what are we aiming for? Are we aiming for something like Watcher of Realms, where it's something that's more like simple, okay, you have promotions, you have gear, you have artifacts, a limited amount of resources? Or is it going to be more like Raid, where there's tons and tons of stuff? Like, aiming for the perspective of whether we're keeping it simple, or are we really going to let there be a lot of different currencies, a lot of different upgradables to really let people customize their accounts? What's the goal so far for that you've gotten as far as a gist of things?
The goal would be to strike a good middle ground, and I know there's lots of games out there, and mobile games are notorious for this. There's like 88 different currencies, and people don't even know what's going on.
Exactly.
I know there's some games where I'm a new player, I'm testing them out, and I'm like, I don't even know what this currency does. Like okay, I got this reward, I don't even know where to spend it. So we definitely don't want to be that on launch, where people get like 19 different currencies on day one and they don't even know what they do. But we do also want people to be able to flex their knowledge muscles in terms of customization and building things. So it's going to be striking that balance. I don't think we're going to overwhelm people. Like, there's going to be so many things they don't know what's going on. But I do think they're going to be able to customize things. And then one of the things about game design is maybe you don't overwhelm the player base on launch, but you want to make sure you're set up to constantly introduce new things to them after the game has been new and it's kind of past that honeymoon phase.
That makes sense.
Keep introducing things, slow rolling things. That way you don't overwhelm players, and they always have something new and exciting to kind of dive into.
Now that's the sort of answer that you would expect. Like, no, especially for new players. Like, for example, if we take Raid, when I first started playing Raid shortly after the Shamrock fusion, which was a long time ago, there wasn't anywhere near as much stuff as there is now in Raid, to the point that now I've gone back to Raid 2.5 years later for the free-to-play, and I haven't got a clue what half the stuff does. I don't know what Phantom Shogun is. Sand Devil, I've now discovered, does the Ascension on your weapons. I didn't know that to begin with. And Godforge is going to be the same. To begin with, they're going to keep it simple. And then as they introduce more and more things into the game, it will slowly get more complicated. But for people who have been playing it since launch, it should be quite a smooth transition. The downside to that is, in keeping the current active player base happy by constantly bringing out new things, currencies, anyone who's looking to join the game in 3 to 4 years' time might then be overwhelmed. Oh, what does all this stuff do? But hopefully they'll do it in such a way that as they progress, it will follow a similar progression pattern to us as the first round of players, and then only introduce those additional things once they've completed previous content.
What stat, attribute, or mechanic were you in love with, if this applies, but did you have to give up on because it was too complicated, too much time, too much engineering resources, limitations? Was there anything that you really wanted to implement that you're like, this just doesn't work, we can't do it?
Yeah, one of the things that we are lucky enough to have here at Fateless is, we already have kind of a large community, and we have an amazing group of founders with Simon and Fixion and Sham, and we have lots of investors kind of backing us and going to bat for us. So in terms of like the basics that we want to get done, we haven't really had to scrap anything because of resources.
That's great.
So yeah, we're lucky enough at Fateless to kind of be in a position where all the basics we want to do, we're able to get done. Now, obviously, we don't have the $500 million budget of like an Amazon Studios game or something, but I think every basic system that we want in the game, we're gonna be able to get in the game. And the main concern is making a cool game that isn't like too crazy on day one. Like we don't want players to dive in and be like, whoa, I don't know what's happening. So like I said before, it's kind of finding that balance. But the good news is, if we really want something in the game, we're going to be able to get it done, and it's going to be there.
Awesome.
Well, that's good. That's promising. I mean, Brad sort of dodged the question a little bit. Or did he? So there's two trails of thought looking at it. He's saying that all the basics that you would want in a game like this, they were able to get done. Fabulous. Love that. The question was, was there anything that they really love that they can't put in there for one reason or another, not just resources? Now, I think even if there was something, Brad's not going to say it. The reason for it is, let's say the answer was Clan Boss. Clan Boss is too difficult to put in there, so they're not able to do it. In revealing that information, you're sort of spoiling the game, but also very much in a negative connotation as well. So even if there was something, I don't think he was ever actually going to tell us. But, taking Brad's word at face value, it seems like everything that we would expect in a game like this so far has been, plain sailing, and they're able to get in, which I really do enjoy. Now, obviously, we know that there's going to be normalized PvE and PvP modes. Now, in a podcast that I believe Simon and Sham did with, I think it was Vex a few weeks ago, they did mention that one of those won't be there for launch. Most likely going to be the PvP. The normalized PvP won't be there for launch. So that's fine. Things like that take a lot of time and resources to implement, but they will come eventually. Now, whether that's one of those things that potentially they're not able to do just yet, and Brad didn't want to say, I don't know. But that's the information we have so far. And ultimately, it seems like, as we said before, everything is good to go right now.
He mentioned, so is there any kind of stats buffs or debuffs that were hard to implement? What about not money, but just like mechanically, the trying to maybe it's coming up with that right formula to make this be balanced and not overpowered, or just straight implementing it into the game. Maybe it's timings with the actual animations. Like, is there been anything that's been like way more difficult than you expected it to be regarding creating these types of like mechanics with buffs and debuffs?
Yeah, the funny enough, the one of the more difficult things that we have to revisit basically daily is the actual syntax and the vernacular of how we say things, because you've got thousands of different things happening in thousands of different ways, and it's like, how do you write that skill just word wise so that it's consistent and it's easy to understand and the player gets it. And we're just daily finding exceptions when we're designing a hero. Like, wait, we can't word that. We can't say attack one enemy 2 times and do this multiplier, because, well, what if it's, you know, what if it's only a single target hit and it's not it's just, there's always thousands of things like that come up. So you start to learn that part. So when you see discrepancies in games, now I kind of laugh, because I'm like, yeah, I get why they had to word it like that, because like the player might be like, this is confusing, why didn't you word it like this? And usually there's a reason for that, like, oh, it wouldn't have made sense because it would clash with the way we worded it over here. So funny enough, the syntax and how we're going to write skills to present it to the player ends up being a big project that we have to talk about daily.
It's a lot of like order of operations, like math, like PEMDAS.
Yep.
It's like making sure things flow in a way, if that makes sense.
Like, do we say place defense down for 2 turns on the target, or do we say place defense down on the target for 2 turns? And like,
the littlest things can make a.
And there's hundreds of those. Like what order do we list it? What will make most sense?
Interesting.
And then it ends up clashing with something else. So yeah, it's a daily challenge to try and have our game be easily legible for the player. And I can actually give you a definitive example for this, and it actually made me learn something. Is so, like, in Raid, I don't know if we can pop it up on the screen while I'm talking about it, but there is an epic hero, Allure, and Allure has an A1 that says attack 3 random enemies and lower their turn meter. But that's actually not what it does. That's not what it does. So Allure actually targets one hero
and then hits them 3 times.
No, and then hits 2 random targets.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yes. So and I didn't realize that until we tried to have an ability like that, and I was like, well, how have other games worded this? And then I'm like, wait a minute, it's not even right. So and that's like the tough part of the. So like, do we say attack 3 random enemies? Do we say attack at random 3 times? Yeah. But then how does the player start the ability? So they click on the A1
and they expect it to go to that one person.
Do they just tap anywhere on the screen and it goes off at random?
Like,
so do they so it's just thousands of little things like that you don't really know until you're on the other side. But it's fun, and I love doing it, and it's gonna be a constant kind of battle to do it as best we can.
Yeah, even
like that is so insightful and not something that I have ever considered. So the question was buffs, debuffs, and whilst again we're not focusing on that specifically, it's so interesting to see or hear Brad talk about that side of things, like Allure. I never even noticed that, to be fair, until he brought it up, and then you go look, and everything he's just said makes total sense. Like, you can't attack someone, or you can't attack 3 times at random, because he said, where do you click? Do you click the cross? Do you click the dirt to start it off? It just doesn't make sense. You have to target someone or something first, and it will go from there. Like Duke, for example, Duke the Pierced is an orc hero, epic hero that I've got on my free-to-play, and he has a provoke, where you target someone to provoke them, and then up to like 2 others at random. It can't be provoke 3 randoms, because then who do you target? So, and that's helped me play better since I've watched this in the few runs I've done at Arena and things like that, Doom Tower. So, again, super insightful. It was great to hear that. And yes, I guess it's just one of those things that you just don't know until you're on the other side. And to be a fly on a wall in some of these meetings and all this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff fascinates me. It sounds like a daily chore for Brad and the others, which I don't envy, but was super interesting and insightful.
Well, okay. I want to wrap this up with a more fun personal question too, related to both sides of things. So, is there any hero that is kind of a personal, like, passion project of yours? Like, maybe before this, did you have any characters or skill sets in mind where you're like, oh, I really wish this character was in Raid, was in Diablo, was in any game that, like, you wish, oh, I would love the skills, and you made it happen in Godforge? Is
I do have one for sure. We haven't leaked this hero
okay.
though,
So it's to come.
yeah.
Okay.
And when the time comes, I'll definitely be transparent about that, and I'll say who it was. But I definitely have a hero that just is from somewhere that Sham got me into, and once I saw that hero kind of come to life and everything about kind of the personality and on the battlefield and stuff, I was like, I can't wait to bring this to Godforge, and I can't wait to design the abilities and stuff. Yes,
That's
and see the
fun.
artwork. So I'll definitely tell everybody why as soon as I can.
All right, I like it. At least a little mystery. Alrighty, but yeah, we have so many other fun things we could talk about regarding design, but I think we should leave it at that for now. And
So that is it, guys. So in reference to that last question, I love that. I don't know how to describe it. Like, Brad has his own sort of like little baby, let's call it, in Godforge. You know, and I know that all the guys involved are passionate, but when you are passionate about something and you put all of your love and dedication into it, it's really going to show on the other side. And for Brad, it's going to be something to be proud of. Now, the fact it's not been revealed yet, that's fine. As he said, when it does get dropped, he'll be transparent. You'll probably go check that out on his own YouTube channel. But now I'm super excited to know and to hear his thoughts on where he got the inspiration from to do these things. It's obviously something that him and Sham have in common. So, you know, who knows what that could be? It could be like the TV show American Gods, for example. That's sort of like a modern spin on ancient mythos. Perhaps Sham had watched it, got Brad to watch it, and Brad got an idea from there. It could be another TV program, could be a book, could be a plethora of things. But either way, I'm super excited to see it when it does drop. So yeah, well done. And that's it for today's video. So thank you for taking the time to watch this. The next one I say will drop later in the week, which will be my own podcast react. So that'll be super fun to do. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, work hard, but as always, play harder, and I'll see you in another one soon. Cheers.